Hey, I'm Michael Lunsford here at Citizens for a New Louisiana, and we are meeting with candidates that will be on the ballot November 3rd. This is Dustin Murphy, and he is running for U.S. Senate, which is statewide. So no matter where you are in Louisiana, Dustin will be on your ballot. Now, Dustin, a lot of folks, I think that what's the most common question you get is, why are you running for Senate? So tell us.
I'm running for Senate because this is what I felt led to do. And if you're a believer in Christ and you believe in that sort of thing, it's pretty much self-explanatory. I prayed about it. I went on a 3-day fast and I asked, I wanted to make sure it wasn't fleshly, it wasn't ego, it wasn't pride. I wanted to make sure that I was doing it for the right reasons. And I have a servant's heart, and I felt like this was the best way for me to serve my community, my state, and my country, is to go up there and fight for our freedoms and our liberties and maintain.
Hmm. Well, speaking of regular topics, I know that's like your top question. What are some things? I mean, for a living, most people that run for office are lawyers. But are you a lawyer?
No, no, I'm a welder. I'm a blue collar guy. I work just like everybody else. I pretty much work 40, 50 hours a week, put in my time, go home, and that's the way I was living before all this came about. I'm not a super political person. I wasn't until the last a little over a year ago. I got into it and really started keeping up, and I seen the direction that the Republican Party was going, and I said, I prayed about it, and I felt convicted about the fact is why don't more regular people or just normal people run for office? Why don't we hold office? Why are we not represented as a citizen legislature in the way it was designed to be? So I was convicted by it. I just felt like, hey, why not me? Why not a regular 9 to 5? Why not your typical average American?
Right, because how can someone represent you if you're a 40-hour-a-week working person? You're going to elect a lawyer who's, I mean, obviously they do their own kind of work, but it's a different kind of work. It's how do they represent the masses well when the masses don't do what most of the elected officials do? So it makes perfect sense that someone would come up and say, look, I want to represent you. I am already one of you. I'm not somebody different that's just asking for the job. So that's very refreshing, by the way. So we talked earlier about how people in a position like an elected official should be doing more. And one of the things we talked about was John Bel Edwards has effectively destroyed Louisiana's economy. We're going to be stuck in 50th place for who knows how long. And yet we have these elected officials who are content to just blame Edwards for this and just keep their mouth shut.
I think a lot of that falls back to the party moving center left. We see it through history. If you look at it, you analyze it, you break it down analytically, the Republican Party today is what Democrats were 20, 25 years ago. So we're seeing a shift to the left. We haven't stood on solid ground. We haven't built a solid foundation of conservative principles and core principles and just upheld those. We've slowly moved. And in your statewide and running for the Senate, people say, well, you can't do anything. But you can. You can be a voice. I mean, we talked about earlier, like or not, AOC has changed the narrative of the Democrat Party. I don't agree with anything she says, but she has a tactic that I believe we could apply to the Republican Party. I'm a younger guy. I'm an average person. So you get up there, you be loud, you be bold, and you stand on your conservative principles, and you refuse to give up on your core values. And I think that's how we bring the narrative back, and we shift the party back right, pun intended.
All right. Now you talked. Your primary focus for running for office is liberty.
Medical liberties. I think that's the Trojan horse, and I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. Like we talked about, you look at communistic, socialistic takeovers, it starts in education and healthcare. And a lot of people think healthcare is just health insurance or the way it's applied at the hospital. But when you're talking about public health, we're talking about the overall health of the nation. Like right now with the mask mandates, 7, 8 months ago, nobody would have, people would have just throw their hands up and said, there ain't no way the government can tell me to put a mask on. Well, look at us now. Whether it's 65, 70% of people walk around with a mask on all day. I'm against the mandate. I don't think the government has that authority.
Right.
There are certain police powers guaranteed through the Constitution, but you're really having to stretch it to push it where we've pushed it today.
Right. Now, along the same lines of liberty, you talked about if you were fortunate to win the election, you would make an effort. Obviously, we don't know what the requirements are, but you were going to join the Liberty Caucus. Who's in the Liberty Caucus in the U.S. Senate?
My favorite member of the Liberty Caucus is Rand Paul. Rand has been an advocate for medical liberties. He's a doctor. He's an eye doctor. He has performed surgeries, but he's always stood for liberty, even whenever it went against the grain, even whenever it brought him some heat, he brought some slack. And another guy I love is Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is very outspoken. He's very conservative, very hard on his core beliefs. He doesn't shift and shake a lot, and I would love to work with guys like that. Those are my top two guys I'd like to get down and just sit and have a full conversation with.
Right. So we talked just a moment ago in the liberty discussion. You mentioned that usually socialism comes in two ways. It comes in healthcare, which you talked about. We haven't talked about education yet. So what's your education philosophy? Should the federal government be able to mandate education policy downward, or should teachers be allowed to choose in their situation how to educate kids in their classroom?
Yeah, I would much rather get the federal government out. And when Reagan was president, that was a staple of the conservative movement, was to remove the Department of Education. Because if you, again, analytically and statistically, if you go back and look, every year since the inception of the Department of Education, we've fallen further and further behind on the worldwide scale. I believe that we should get it back to our local school districts, give the power back to, parishes, just get it down to a smaller body, because we're trying to apply principles at a federal level that all kids are the same, and we know that's not true. And no one knows our students better than our teachers and our local facilities. They know our kids, they know their needs, they understand our geographical needs. Everything's changed. That's what we talked about was, it's different in Lafayette than it is in West Monroe. And it's going to be different in New Orleans than it is in Shreveport. They're all metropolitan areas, but it's going to have a different need. Kids are going to have different requirements. And I think that once you try to put a blank statement across all kids, that's where we failed. And we need to get the government out of it. The government ruins everything they become a part of.
That's right.
And it's always started with good intentions, but it always leads to some kind of just complete disaster.
Well, look, let's jump real quick. I know earlier we talked about scorecards and how those are a little deceptive.
Yes.
And I forget which ones we talked about. I know there's several out there, but relatively, the two Republican candidates, we'll assume they're both conservative to a degree, the rankings are about the same, but you're telling me that that's not the whole truth. So explain that.
So when you see these scorecards, they're yes and no questions. Some of them have a place where you can describe your answer or explain your answer. And then there's certain ones that I've taken that are you're led to an opinion. And all you have to do is check the answer they want you to check, and you score 100%. It's that simple. You can be 100% conservative and have big government liberal views, because the questions are loaded in a way that you automatically know what to answer. They give you the opinion they want you. They give you the answer.
They give you the answer.
Yeah, it's basically just a cheat sheet that you can say, hey, I have this great scorecard. Look at me.
And I've participated in that process before, and I have seen those. They don't ask you what legislation have you supported, what have you voted for, what have you voted against. They don't grade based on that. They grade based on, hey, what do you think of this? Do you think we should lower taxes? Oh, absolutely, I think we should lower taxes. Have you ever voted to raise taxes? I don't want to talk about that. That's kind of why we're talking about that scorecard, is when they ask questions. So you have to do your own research. The scorecards are a good start, but still getting to know the candidates are great. So look, Dustin, we're coming towards the end of our video here. We've still got a couple minutes left. But if you can, I'd like for you to talk directly to folks that are watching this and explain to them why you're the candidate that you think would be best suited for the job of U.S. Senate. Go ahead.
I think I'm best for the U.S. Senate because I represent the typical average everyday Louisianian. I work, my wife works, we understand what it is to get by. I know the same struggles that you go through because I go through them. I know what COVID has done to us. I know what it's doing to y'all because, like I said, we're there. We live the same life. And I'm a liberty man. I believe that we're under attack. It's a full frontal assault that's been building year after year, and now they're waging an all-out war. And I think that we're the best candidate to fight for that because I have a certain core value that I'm not willing to concede any of my values. I'm going to stand firm in what I believe, and moving forward, I would try to do that for the state of Louisiana, and I hope to get the opportunity to represent it.
So it's Dustin Murphy. He has a Facebook page. And what's the website address?
The website is DustinBMurphy.com.
Be like boy.
Yeah,
okay.
DustinBMurphy.com.
All right, check him out. And look, reach out to him. The Facebook is a great way to have a two-way conversation with somebody. Just log on and start a conversation. If you have questions and things, that's how to get in touch. Thanks for coming in, Dustin.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
See you all for the next one.